Hi everyone, today is January 6th, 2018, and this is the Duel Assessment, your podcast for Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. My name is GreenRanger.
And I'm DeckTech.
It's our first episode of 2018, so happy New Year's and holidays to everyone. That's all out of the way.
That's right. We're done with that. There's no more festivities for you all.
Unfortunately, this year didn't begin a great way in Duel Links. We got our new set last week, December 31st, and everyone was excited to try out the new archetypes, but then this whole new deck just came out of nowhere and ruined a lot of things, and everyone's really angry online. So DeckTech, where are you in this commotion?
So I'm a little bit less angry, but that might be just because I've been playing less PvP than probably the average Redditor. I've gotten in a good amount of games just to test stuff out, especially the new Boogeyman that we'll talk about later, and then prepping for various nerfs, and it's been fun. I just about wrapped up the Battle City event. I've maxed out Bones' level, and I've moved on to Arcana now. So I'm kind of doing a normal, average amount of grind. I haven't been neglecting the game as I had done in some of the weeks before, but I'm also not going super ham on it. Obviously a lot going on in real life for New Year's and stuff, but I think we're back on the horse for normal amounts of play. How's about you? What are you up to?
Yeah, I've been playing this game called Warframe too much, and that's kind of been eating into my time as well. But in Duel Links, I was playing that deck, the deck we'll talk about later, the first day it came out, and I think I was the one who told you about it. And I got tired of it pretty fast, so then I started playing other decks, Red Eye Zombie and Genex. Red Eye Zombie actually is revived now because the Bones version is pretty good with Storm. So you get your extra field spell as an extra card for Storm ammunition. So pretty good. And then I moved on to Genex, and Genex is also very good in this meta, and might be even better with the nerfs. Particularly a beatdown version, which I hadn't played before, so I will share some of that later as well.
Nice. So what is Warframe before we move on?
So it's a game that's free to play on Steam, first of all, but there's they try to convince you to pay for certain things, and you can't unlock certain weapons, but there is a way to get it. But it's very grindy. It's kind of like No Man's Sky, but you actually fight for you actually do fighting, and you collect things and you craft things and you go to different planets, stuff like that. It's really good graphics for a game that runs pretty quietly on a gaming laptop. So that's what appealed me to it.
All right. Cool. Do you have anything on this next thing, or do you want to just go on to the news?
I don't really make resolutions normally. Do you?
Yeah, no, that maybe should have been something we covered in the pregame. I don't really make resolutions either, so right. To anyone who does make New Year's resolutions, good luck on y'all's.
Yeah, try to get your highest rank, whatever that may be. Have fun in the game.
Yeah, that's good. Maybe a resolution to try a different type of deck or something like that.
Or be less stressed out.
Resolution.
Be less stressed out if you're just trying to get King of Games continuously and you can't get it. It's just a game. A lot of people get stressed out by games. That's pretty common nowadays. So, yeah.
Yeah, don't forget it's supposed to be fun.
Yep. All right. So there's a lot of talk about esports, actually. There was a tournament that happened and a lot of upcoming ones that are actually happening today, I think. So let's talk about the Meta Weekly Tournament that happened on the 2nd of January. Duel Links Meta kicked off their Meta Weekly series, and this is kind of the thing where DK tried to have a tournament every week. And they're actually doing a season points format, which is the first quarter from January, February, and March. What do you think about a season points format? That's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, it is pretty cool. We're going to talk about the Meta Championship series after this one, and that's kind of, I think, what the main purpose of the points is. And it's nice. I really like that DK and his community are building this really robust tournament scene. It's interesting, as we've mentioned several times, that it's not coming from Konami or through Konami, and it actually looks like it's kind of making a big split from Konami in terms of the format, which also surprised me. So, I mean, we might touch on that a little bit more later, but it looks like a lot of the top tournaments are doing now a one deck 5-card sideboard format instead of a multiple deck format that Konami had done as the like quote official format. So I found that very interesting, and I like the point total. It kind of it makes it more of a objective point that players are trying to reach, which is always nice in terms of trying to make it a valid system, if you would, instead of just giving out invites to people you like, at least entirely to people you like, or people who've donated the most, or some other non-skill or accomplishment-based system that might, I don't know, raise some eyebrows.
Yeah, basically we're talking about the top player council in Duel Links Meta. And these people, I think what they do, their contribution is they have to write a guide every month, I think. It's like a guide of a meta deck, and they get assigned a role. So, for example, Shiny Sophion is like a hazy flame expert, Nyx is a burn expert, things like that. They write a guide, and then they also respond to the channels more often. I think that's what their role is, but it's not really much more than a regular person on Discord. So the top 16 point earners become part of this top player council in Duel Links Meta. That's what they're doing this for.
Yeah.
All right. So first place is our Patreon, Grand Harrier.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet.
Yeah, and he did it with a Shadow Game Gladiator Beast deck. It's very interesting. They might have been talking about Shadow Game in Duel Links Meta Discord channel, but this is basically a regular Gladiator Beast deck. I think one of the fusion monsters actually bring the monsters back into your deck, right? If I'm not mistaken. It's like a contact fusion, and they go right back into the deck. So that kind of replenishes your deck. And Gladiator Beasts typically, they shuffle monsters in and out of their deck, and this kind of reduces how many cards are in your graveyard. And this does have an advantage over control decks, because control decks and stall decks, they just like send their spells and traps to the graveyard, and they just wait and don't attack. So this has an advantage over those types of decks for sure.
Yeah, it's a very interesting build. I haven't seen too much Glad Beasts and Shadow Game, and it's a nice combo to kind of suck stuff out of your graveyard or make them not go into the graveyard initially by just kind of doing the tag out feature of Glad Beasts. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Second place, Teemo Phenom, middle-aged mechs, Ancient Gears deck. And this is a slightly different version. There's no Beast in it. There's no Ancient Gear Soldier. Well, the top decks don't really run Ancient Gear Soldier anyways, but there's a Heavy Knight of Flame for some reason. It might be some kind of special summon meta to warrant Heavy Knight of Flame. Seer Karibo as well. And then just the whole assortment of really good traps and spells like Super Rush Headlong, Econ, Floodgate. Floodgate's are normal, but Mirror Wall, Shingzenhu, Curse of Anubis, and Windstorm. And you don't see cards that target machines like Pulse Mines or Rare Metamorphs in this deck.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting. It's kind of just like a good stuff deck.
Yeah.
I don't know. It almost looks like this is just some like his best cards, which would kind of lead one to believe that it's a budget thing. Except he's got the 3 Sergeant Electros, which are medium budget, and then the 2 Super Rush, which is also kind of medium. So I'm not going to assume that that's the reason. I would say there's probably some meta reasons for him having exactly this mix. The 2 Floodgate Trapholes, again, that's another, takes a while to get that. So
yeah.
I'm assuming it's like, intentional, and he had a specific plan in mind with this combo and of things, and it worked out for him. But it is a little bit of an interesting looking list where it's a lot more of just the good stuff instead of more of like a thematic way of building your deck.
And going back to Rare Metamorph, that card particularly countered Econ. And there are no Cyber Angels in this top 4, which makes me think Econ going down, or Cyber Angels going down, Econ going down, Rare Metamorph going down, sort of.
Yeah, you say that. Oh, yep. Okay, so in this tournament, the Sprite was banned.
Oh, right, yes.
The Woodland Sprite, which was key for the most common version of the deck that shall not be named. That
for now, yeah.
Yeah, for now, that we're going to talk about later, that kind of broke the meta and whatnot. And so on the latter, at least, I saw an uptick in econs, maximum econ, which had a lot of splash damage for Cyber Angels and other decks that are, more adversely affected by econ. But in this format, where you're not going to face that kind of most recent boogeyman, as it were, then maybe you build your decks a little bit differently. And you're right, that might have once you take that out and Cyber Angels is no longer the boogeyman and the other boogeyman is gone, you don't need econ to specifically counter those decks, then maybe you don't need the Rare Metamorph.
Yeah. Third, fourth place, Andy Sang. This is a worm burn deck, sort of. You've got your reptiles. You've got the reptiles are Evil Dragon Ananta. There's 3 of them. There's several worm cards for draw, particularly. Worm Barsis does something else to flip something into defense mode, I think. And then you have your burn cards. You have Shadow Game skill again, so it kind of does continuous damage. There's Lava Golem. Lava Golem actually does help Shadow Game a lot because it sends the 2 monsters to the graveyard, so that's extra burn damage. And Cobra Jar. Cobra Jar is an old school burn card, and it's also a reptile, so that feeds into the Ananta as well.
Yeah, I don't really know what all the worms do.
They draw
we
cards.
Pretty much. Okay. Yeah. I mean, we've pretty much never seen them so in competitive play. So it's really interesting that he brought it and did very well with it. Yeah. What's this trap next to the floodgate that he's got 3 of? Do we know?
Penetrable attack.
Okay.
That just negates the attack, right? I think.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a really interesting deck. Not like that, which we'd see normally.
And Ananta does counter Shadow Game because it removes your reptiles from play from the graveyard.
Yeah, that must have been kind of, I guess, the main intention there for switching it up, and it's a cool way of doing it.
Yeah. And third, fourth place as well is Masaryk. And this is just Beatdown, Red Eye Zombie. I had to translate that word, so that means Beatdown. And it's a Lava Golem Beatdown. There's 2 anti-magic arrows, though, and no storms. So it's a different way of playing it. It's kind of the old way of playing Red Eye Zombie. You don't use storm. And of course, you don't have the Bones Field spell as well, so storm is less good. 2 insights and 2 spirits, so less ammunition for storm as well. So.
Mm-hmm.
There's future meta weekly tournaments scheduled for the 9th, January 9th, 10th, 14th, 15th, and 17th. So there's a lot of them. And I think what his goal is to get different times for different audiences. So he mentioned an Asian and Australian time and a European time as well. So DK is trying to get tournaments for everyone, I think.
Yeah, it's really great that he's doing that. It seems like it would take a lot of time and effort on his part, especially since we know that he's like doing casting and stuff as well. So great on him for putting in so much work to try to build this robust tournament scene, all of which is leading into, as we mentioned, the Meta Championship Series 5.
Yep. Meta Championship Series 5 is taking place January 27th. 364 players. This one's going to be the biggest one ever, I think. He's trying to get that many people in. It's a culmination of all Meta Weekly tournaments. Everyone from the top 8 is getting a spot automatically. So I guess that's why there is so much room, because there's going to be a higher number of people who get automatic entry into the tournament from these Meta Weekly championships. the remaining invites go to people from other means, including giveaways and season points. And then it's going to be a 2-day event with a $10 buy-in, over 3,000 in prizes, and it grows every time the event goes on. It's going to be one deck, 5-card sideboard. Day 1 will be 7 rounds of Swiss. Can you explain what Swiss is, just briefly?
Yeah, sure. So Swiss is, there are kind of like various versions on it, but the basic concept of Swiss is that you just play a set round, or a set number of rounds, versus people of similar scores as you, and after each round you get a score based on how the game went. Usually it's like 3 for a win, 1 for a tie, and 0 for a loss. And then so since you're playing against people with similar scores, it kind of helps narrow down the field pretty quickly. I mean, you still do like 7 rounds, but it's instead of like a single elimination bracket or a double elimination bracket where 1 or 2 games can cost you. Usually with Swiss, you'll see people saying like, okay, we expect the cutoff to be something like you need to go 5-2 or something like that.
Right.
And then all the people who have done that can go. So it takes a little while, so you have to strap in for like a full day. Maybe not in Duel Links because the matches go very quickly, but you have to sit there for a whole day to figure it out. But it feels good for players who are hardcore into the tournament because you've got it kind of takes some variance out of it, where you're intentionally playing many games and against an increasingly narrowing field, so that it is supposed to be one of the best indicators of who should be in that top cut, whatever the top cut is, in this case, 32.
Yeah, and you're playing 7 rounds of it as well. And a lot of the waiting game is actually waiting for other people to go. I found from tournaments, because people play at different speeds, and you're just waiting for someone to finish to get into your match. So you have like an hour of downtime or something like that. Even though the games go fast in Duel Links, they still have to wait a bit. But Swiss does seem like a pretty good format for such a big player pool, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It works. It works particularly well when you have a really big field like this, because the downside of Swiss is when you're supposed to be paired against people of similar rankings, scores, and if you cannot, because there's nobody with your same score, then you might get paired against someone with a lower score, and then that hurts you for like tiebreakers and stuff. So when they do tiebreakers, they usually compare it based on the scores of the people you've played against. And so if there's not enough people, then Swiss can be annoying, because you can get kicked out of the top cut just based on the fact that somebody you beat is no longer in the tournament if they dropped, or they just didn't do well because there was nobody at the time in the 4th round who was 4-0 like you, but then like subsequently you ended up going 5-2 or something, and it just turns out that the 3-1 guy that you faced ended up going 3-4 or something. And so it ends up like really hurting you if you get paired down sometimes, and people don't like that. They also don't like that it really hurts you if you get paired with someone who ends up dropping. So it works better when there are more players, and if there's some mechanism in place to, I don't know, keep people in it so they don't drop, or just make the drops not hurt so bad. But that's kind of getting into the minutia of it. Generally, it's just a better system when there's a lot of people.
Yep. Day 2 is going to be a top 32 single elimination bracket. So that's kind of a normal thing. No double elimination format, so I guess day 2 is going to go a little faster.
Yeah, 32, that means, what is that, like 4 rounds? 32 to 16, 5, right? 16 to 8.
Yeah. So we'll be checking that out whenever that's January 27th. It's still a while to go. And there might be a new box released around that time, the day after, quite around that time. There's going to be a new box as well. So we'll see how that factors into what people are bringing into the tournament.
Yeah, it would be interesting if it showed up like after day 1, start of day 2, that presumably they would
those cards are banned.
Stick with the format. So
Duel Links Pro 12, same format, This is happening today, I believe. Same format as Meta Championship Series. 1 deck, 5-card sideboard. 90 people have registered. And we'll report about it next week since it's happening soon. The J Rabin Cup 3 is happening next week, January 13th. Same format as well. And several high-level and well-known players are planning to attend. So we'll talk about that as well. And the Pro Benchwarmer Anti-Meta Tournament is happening January 14th. What does it mean, Anti-Meta Tournament?
I haven't looked deeply into the specific rules, but I mean, the whole idea is that you're not supposed to play meta decks.
Let me see if I could see something.
It looks like he wants people to submit decks to him ahead of time. So by the 12th, I believe. And so maybe he's kind of just the arbiter of what he deems meta and not meta. In his little rules section here, there's no specific list of what constitutes meta and what doesn't. And that kind of makes sense considering that deck lists are due a week from now, and you know anything could happen in the meta until then. And obviously, with that kind of like ambiguity and just the fact that it's an anti-meta tournament instead of like these meta ones, this is probably designed to be a little bit more fun and interesting instead of like hyper competitive like the other ones.
Yeah. So we'll see what that's all about next week as well. Or not next week, the week after.
Yeah, and it should be fun. I'm always a fan of, seeing new and interesting things that you probably wouldn't see very much of on the ladder. I'm hoping that some fun stuff comes out of that.
Yep. All right, let's talk about cards. There's new ranked duel rewards. So 4 new cards to the pool. And this season has slightly higher stakes. I guess the Kaiba Cup kind of soured everyone. Like, whatever happened last time, like, no one's really as excited about the Kaiba Cup. But if you get King of Games this season, you get entry into Stage 2 in February. Kaiba Cup in February.
And, hopefully that's good for actually playing it. A lot of people, I think they're soured on just PvP right now, as well as the concept of the Kaiba Cup.
Yeah.
I would assume that Konami, as we know, they're constantly working on the game, constantly making changes, constantly giving feedback and whatnot. So I would hope and assume that they're doing something to address our concerns from the last Kaiba Cup. Some of the concerns, unfortunately, were kind of repeated from prior Kaiba Cups, so that's not the best sign. But I'm still going to try to get King of Games. We're just a few days in. I haven't played a ton, but I did start okay. I think I'm at Legend 2 now, so I'm gonna try to make the push. And if not, usually the Stage 1 was fairly easy last time too. So
yeah,
you can still
even I got it. So like, yeah.
They let anyone in.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about these cards. Overdone Burial is a equip spell. Activate this card by discarding 1 monster, then target 1 monster in your graveyard whose level is lower than the discarded monster's original level. Special summon it and equip it with this card. The equipped monster has its effects negated. You can only activate 1 Overdone Burial per turn. So what this does... Actually, I want to note this card's pretty new. It was released October 2017. And same card set as Temple of Mind's Eye. These are pretty new cards, actually. It's very interesting. So this card could be more useful in the future when you have more graveyard synergy combos. It does help you dump something off to the graveyard. But it's overall a weak graveyard resurrection card, I would say. A card like Powerful Rebirth, which does not require the cost of a card, is a bit better, I think. It does have no limits on the monster, though. It just has to be lower than the discarded monster. So it could be an effect monster, or it could have more than 4 stars. They note that you could destroy this card and give the monster its effects back. So you could use Storm to destroy this card and get the monster's effects back. But Powerful Rebirth doesn't need that. So you get your effect monster right away.
Yeah, it's an interesting card. Graveyard Resurrection is always kind of a fun and interesting mechanic in all card games. It's a very frequent mechanic in Yu-Gi-Oh! And so I think a Duel Links is just trying to narrow it down to figure out exactly what the right power level for that mechanic is in this game. It seems like we're kind of constantly power creeping on that mechanic, but maybe one day we'll hit the one that really kind of hits that sweet spot for this game.
We'll never get Call of the Haunted, because Bones doesn't give it to you. Like, we'll just never get that card. It's just as good as Monster Reborn.
Yeah. Well, it's a trap, so slightly slower, but different better in some, yeah. But yeah, I mean, probably not Monster Reborn or Call of the Haunted unless just we get all kinds of power creep in this game. You know, hopefully this game's around for years to come, and maybe somewhere down the line we finally get these broken cards because just everything has gotten to that power level. But for now, probably not any time in the foreseeable future.
It's going to be Bones' level 60 reward watch.
Yeah, there you go. I'm ready. I've already got him capped at the 40, so.
I don't know how you do it. I still don't have Arcana at 40 yet, and he's the only guy I've been running.
Well, I don't. He's at 18 for me.
Oh, whatever. Phantom Magician, SR Spellcaster, 600, 700. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon one hero monster with 1,000 or less attack from your deck and face-up defense. So anytime there's a monster like this that tutors a card from your graveyard and puts it on the field, you have to pay attention because these are really good abilities. And this could work with the Destiny heroes and also the Elemental heroes. And you can combo with a trap card, Hero Signal or Destiny Signal, and you could special summon 2 monsters from your deck.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Do we know which heroes this kind of hits in the current meta?
Destiny, because they're weaker.
Mm-hmm.
And the Elemental heroes, there's like a smaller pool that could meet that requirement. But you could get like a Bubble Man, and you could draw 2 cards right off the bat just by special summoning Bubble Man.
OP. Pot of Greed. It allows me to draw 2 cards.
Whenever that deck gets banned, this is going to be the new combo right here. New Pot of Greed right here. Berserker Crush. This is a rare quick play spell. Remove from play 1 monster from your graveyard. The attack and defense of 1 face-up winged Kuriboh you control become equal to the attack and defense of that monster until the end phase of this turn. Unfortunately, this is not the anime where you run winged Kuriboh for no reason. And, you don't build around a monster you don't attack with. And you typically would use winged Kuriboh in a stall deck where there are no strong monsters.
Yeah. It's a really interesting card, really specific. I don't see how it's going to see play. But
it's one of those cards they used in the anime. It's kind of like, you know how there's cards like Dark Magic Attack and White Lightning or stuff like that? There's like cards that are named after attacks in the anime, and this is one of those, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. This seems like an anime card where it's just like there's no out. And the baddie just left, killed all the important monsters and left the winged Kuriboh and probably made fun of it because that's what always happens. And then he's like, oh, yeah? Heart of the cards. Kill you. Except this was Jaden's guy, right? So I don't know if he had heart of the cards. But, the same idea where it's you top deck this really obscure card for some reason just for mostly story purposes. So since those stories don't really exist in real life, you probably shouldn't be building your deck with them in mind.
I think the way they say Heart of the Cards in GX, or Jaden says it, is the game's not over till the last card is played.
Yeah. There you go.
Yep. And probably one of the best cards out of this 4 is Contact Out. It's actually the end card. It's a quick play spell. Return 1 Neos fusion monster you control to the extra deck. If all the fusion material monsters listed on that fusion monster are in your deck, you can special summon them. So this is like a defusion. You could fuse your guy attack and then defuse and then get your monsters back for extra abilities or for attacking as well.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like a good way to just kind of have a really good attack phase, right? So you can
Yeah.
fusion, swing in with your big dude, and then defusion to swing in with a couple smaller dudes, and just get a lot of attack power on the board from that. So it's good. I like it.
Yeah, there's a post on Reddit. Someone put up a deck, and they also used the new card from the trader, Miracle
Hmm.
Fusion, I think. And they said what a good card this was. So definitely pick it up as an end card.
Yeah.
And there's 3 new card trader cards. They're all plants, and the first one's pretty funny. It's called Popcorn, and it's only funny just because it's like Duel Links has these, not Duel Links. Yu-Gi-Oh has these cards. It's like Ghost Beef. There's a card called Ghost Beef, and there's one called Santa Claus. So it's like a fiend with claws. But this is Popcorn. Four
Yeah.
star, 1200, 800. When a field spell is on face up on the field, this card gains 1,000 attack. So the field spell could actually be your opponent's side too. Now that I read it, it's both sides. Um,
Right.
so this is basically a 2200 with a field, and I guess the best deck that could run this is Handless because they run Gateway to Chaos or Gateway to Light, whatever that gets guy out that field.
Right. I think to chaos. So we were talking about this a little bit before the recording. For like a hot second, I was super hyped because I was about to beat down with Bastion using the Earth, whatever it's called, firm
Mighty
as
as
Earth or
Earth.
something.
Yeah, Firm as Earth. Yeah.
And but then I realized that skill requires you to take damage before it's activated, so it's not nearly as good. But still, I mean, a 4-star 2200 is, you would only play it in decks in which you expect to have a field spell on the field, and so in terms of aggressive ones that require you to have something on the field, Handless is kind of the main one that comes to mind. Dinos have it. Bones now sometimes has kind of a more aggressive feel to it. You've got a couple other ones. Obviously Mako decks tend to be with the ocean, and so there's a good amount of field spells, and 2200 for 4 stars just solid. So when there's less field spell removal, as there is now, it seems like a decent card. I'm pretty excited about it, and the memeable appearance is definitely a plus in my opinion. Imagine how like degrading it would be to lose to Popcorn.
It's kind of like Sonic Duck or what was the other card? Jerry Beans.
Yeah,
Early on. Yeah. Do you know what would be funny if people run this card over dinosaurs just because it's stronger?
yeah. I mean, it's possible. I haven't played Dinos, it's in this new version, because, as you know, I didn't play much PvP last season, so I didn't get the new card. But still, I mean, this seems solid.
Yeah, it seems like it's more than anything that's out there. There's the red dinosaur that gets 2200, but people don't even play that card. Maybe it could be with Bones because it's hard to say, but it's definitely better than anything you would just combine a field like a Power of the Dark. Those just get to like 2000,
Yeah,
and this is 22, so definitely worth getting this card.
yeah, and I mean, the downside, of course, is if they kill your field, you're just like totally boned. Whereas with the other more medium-sized guys, if they kill your field, you're still in the game a bit.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm not seeing very much spell or trap removal. I guess Red Eyes has the Storm now, but I mean, it's had it for a while, but that's kind of the more common build now. But that's kind of mostly it, I think, that I'm seeing. So seems like a decent time to at least try it out and maybe meme some people out of the game.
Yeah. Horsey Tail. This is a rare 400, 500 plant. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, special summon one Horsey Tail token to your opponent's side of the field in defense. When this token is destroyed by battle with a plant, its controller sends one card from their hand to the graveyard. So obviously this puts a monster on their board, which sets up Lava Golem, right?
Yeah, we've got setting up Lava Golem. The effect's powerful if you can attack into it with your own plant monster, but it's also like a really weird and specific setup. So I don't have a ton of. I'm not excited about this one. I don't think this one's particularly good.
Yeah, the secondary effect isn't. It's just never going to activate. I think. Like if you're playing plants, you're playing plants. You're playing, Rose Lover, and Marinia and Talia, but you're not playing this card.
Yeah, or you would be doing Naturia, right? Most of those are plants, aren't
That's
they?
true.
Or are they
Yeah,
beasts?
they're plants. No,
Yeah.
wait. Some are plants and some are beasts.
Okay.
Because there's a beetle.
Right. So, I mean, but still, even then, that deck is about beatdown, not about draining your
Giving them a
opponent
monster.
resources.
Yeah.
Yeah, or giving them a monster, which is like antithetical to beatdown. So, I don't think this really is fitting into anything that I'm seeing right now.
Yeah. Griggle, rare card. We've seen this card from Mokuba, I believe. 350, 300 plant. When the control of this face-up monster, when the control of this face-up card on the field shifts to your opponent, increase your life points by 3,000. This effect can only be used once as long as this card remains face-up on the field. So no one's going to willingly take this card, but you could use Shen's Spy or Mystic Box, but it's not worth running, really.
Yeah, I mean, this is the type of card that I would love building something around and probably will end up building something around, but I do not expect it to be top tier or even second tier. But that Mystic Box interaction is just so good. I love that. I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to do that.
Any deck that could need life gain, since the skills are getting nerfed, it is important to consider life gain, because you do need to lower your life to activate certain skills. So
Yeah.
yeah, maybe. All right.
Yeah,
There's
and 3,000 is just a lot in this game. I mean, when you start with 4,000, 3,000 is 75% of your expected life total in a game. So obviously it's also just like one or two attacks, depending on the monsters. So it's not like huge, but that is a significant percentage, and it's definitely enough to stall out for maybe like a couple turns, which, since games end so quickly, is another high percentage of the game. So it's a lot of life, and if you can make it work, it's a little bit of a joke type card, but one that I'm going to keep an eye on because there's a very powerful effect there.
Let's divert for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna throw something at you right now.
Okay.
So in Hearthstone, in Arena, any cards that gain you life kind of suck. Like if that's all that they do. Like Healing Touch is really bad. Holy Light's really bad. In Yu-Gi-Oh, gaining life is more important than in Hearthstone, right? Because you use your skills.
Well, yeah, I guess in this game, and I don't know about the normal Yu-Gi-Oh, but there's also a lot more cards that everyone has access to. So there's skills and cards that require you to use your life as a resource. Whereas in Hearthstone, there's only one class that specifically does that, and then the weapons classes kind of do that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because that's how I was kind of seeing this card. It's just like, oh, if it just gains you life, it sucks. But that's just me. Hearthstone Arena, it sucks there, but it's probably a lot better than the way it was here.
Well, Mystic Box is fun because it not only gains you life, but it kills one of their guys, and it leaves them open for attack because you're presumably leaving Griggle up in attack position, and it's not very strong. So it gains you life, hurts them, and then hurts them again, which is cool.
Yeah, I didn't come up with that on my own. I had to go to Yu-Gi-Oh! Wikia for card tips.
Well, there's our tip to the listeners, is to check out the Yu-Gi-Oh! Wikia if you don't know what a new card, like how you want to use it.
Yep. You can see everything you want there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. There's going to be a new subreddit. There is a new subreddit for Duel Links Decklists. I guess they're kind of keeping up with Discord because Discord is a good place to share decks. And this one's just decks. It's called Duel Links Decks. r/Duel Links decks, reddit.com/r/Duel Links decks. And you can filter decks by fun, meta, standard duelists, legendary duelists, or event decks. Great resource for net decking or just getting ideas about what to play. And if you have certain cards, have limitations on certain cards, this is a great way to learn.
Yeah. This community, it's less so, but in a lot of card game communities, there's like this stigma about net decking, which on the one hand, I kind of understand because I love to homebrew stuff myself, but I don't get why it's a stigma. It's kind of more of a personal choice to me.
Right.
There's no shame, in my opinion, in playing the best decks if you want to win. If you're trying to get king of games, it's a lot easier if you're playing the meta decks, and this is one way to find them. It's also, like you said, a great way to get ideas for stuff. If you want to play this card that you have that, you know, seems like a fun card, but you don't know how to do it, this will give you some ideas, just like the yugioh will. Or just something that you never even thought of. You'll see it here. I think the Woodland Sprite combo deck would not have made really much of an impact on the community at all if it weren't for these resources sharing it. In this case, YouTube into Reddit. And so that kind of is where this obscure deck came from and then kind of took over the meta a little bit. So maybe that's not the best example. But if you're not paying attention to these sources, then you're only going to see it after you've been maybe beaten by it a couple times or face it and win. But still, it's nice to be ahead of the meta. It's nice to get these cool ideas, and it's just nice to see what people are doing.
Yeah, for example, front page, there's a Contact Out Last Gamble deck, which just uses Contact Out and Miracle Contact, which I just mentioned. I would have known how to build this deck. Last Gamble, Cross Porter, Neospatian Air Hummingbird. I wouldn't have known to use these cards.
Yeah, it's nice. It gives you at least a head start on your own home brews. I've named myself DeckTech because I like to do home brews and stuff, but really where I've had more like success and because of that a bit more joy sometimes has been taking meta decks and kind of putting my own spins and tweaks on them. So this would be one place where you can get that kind of stuff, where you can get an idea and then make it your own.
Yep. So definitely check them out. Subscribe. Reddit.com/r/Duel Links decks. All right.
Yeah.
We'll move on to the Duel School, which we haven't had in a while. Well, not the Duel School, but the fourth rate deck department, which we haven't done in a while. And that's the deck that DeckTech just mentioned. The Bamboo, either one turn kill or first turn kill if you're going first. That's completely taken over things. And it's a deck, I think it's the first one where you can actually win on turn one. I don't think there has been a deck like that so far. And we think
with significant like percentages, because there's this video I saw, Shady Penguin, who's a fairly famous content creator for various games, including Duel Links, where he lost turn one to Venus and Man Throw Tro, which is something that I'm going to talk about in this shell as well. But
Man Throw is more expensive. Is it expensive or no?
No, it's not expensive in terms of like difficult to get the cards. It's more difficult to play though.
Okay, yeah.
To get off, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, this deck has completely taken over the meta to the point where Konami has actually addressed it within a week. So yeah, DeckTech's going to talk all about this deck. Take it away.
Yeah. So. First of all, what it is, in case you haven't been playing much PvP or keeping up, Woodland Sprite is, well, let's start actually with the Bamboo. So we got Broken Bamboo Sword a while back, which is a card
It's from this set. It's from this set.
No, the broken one has been around, hasn't it?
No, I'm pretty sure it's with
the new one was the Cursed Bamboo and the Golden Bamboo.
I thought it was with this set.
The Broken Bamboo does nothing on its own. It's just an equip spell that says equip monster gains 0 attack. The Cursed Bamboo is also an equip spell that has a moderate amount of various things. It gives the monster 0 attack, so in that sense it does nothing. Itself can be used to bounce a bamboo from your monster back to your hand, which is sometimes relevant for the deck.
It's deck hand, right?
It's from the field to your hand.
Oh, sorry.
The one that you're talking about is when this one dies, when the Cursed Bamboo goes to the graveyard from either your hand or from the field, then it will help you. It will let you find one of the other bamboo cards from your deck into your hand. So the final one, which is kind of the main engine, is the Golden Bamboo Sword, which you can only activate when you have one of the equipped spells active, when you control it. And the effect is you draw 2 cards. So there's your situational Pot of Greed. And as they very wisely kept Pot of Greed out of this game, even the situational version is just crazy powerful. And the engine has allowed people to create decks that can sometimes draw their entire deck on the first turn. And then you use that with Woodland Sprite, which has definitely been around for a long time, which is a weak little plant monster, basically relevant stats of 900 attack, 400 defense, 3 stars, so you can just play him. And his effect, though, is you can send an equipped card that's equipped to him to the graveyard to inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent's life points, which is why the bounce effect of the Cursed Bamboo Sword is sometimes relevant, because the equipped card has to be equipped to the sprite. And so sometimes when you haven't drawn it yet, you can equip a Bamboo Sword to your opponent's monster so that you can start using your Golden Bamboo Swords to get your engine going. And then once you've drawn into your Woodland Sprite, then you can use the Cursed Bamboo Sword to return whatever was on your opponent's monster so that you can then have that extra 500 damage to your opponent. So you play those draw spells. The Bamboo Swords, that's 6 equips, so that's up to 3,000 life point damage there. You usually play some other draw. Common ones are Into the Void and maybe a Cup of Ace to just kind of keep the cycle going. Maybe Restructure Revolution to deal a bit more damage, and then kind of the main damage point is Black Pendants, which equipped monster gains 500 attack, and then when the Black Pendant, gets sent from the field to the graveyard, you inflict 500 damage to your opponent. So Black Pendants, when you use the sprite on them, are actually 1,000 damage each. And so all the Bamboo Swords are Ns, and the Woodland Sprite is an N, and really the only card that you really need that's expensive and hard to get is the Black Pendant, which is a UR. Into the Void's also a UR, which is semi-important, and to keep the engine going and make it more consistent. But as a result, the deck's core is pretty cheap, and like we said, very uninteractive, because on your first turn, which could be the first turn of the game, which would mean that your opponent has almost no chance to do anything. There's a few monsters you can discard from your hand to interact, but they're not very good against anything else, so they're not really seen in the meta. But on your first turn, when your opponent has almost nothing to do, you can draw your whole deck, play the Woodland Sprite, and deal 4,000 or significantly more damage to them all in one turn before they can do anything. And so that has kind of led to people, like we said, it was banned from the Duel Links Meta weekly tournament. Konami already got a whole bunch of complaints and has already commented on it. Let's pull up that comment saying, essentially we're keeping an eye on it, and we might, I guess, add it to the so let's see, on the 4th, 2 days ago, they commented, "We currently are receiving a lot of feedback on duels against a deck using Woodland Sprite. In order to maintain game balance and considering the KC Cup on in February, we may update the limited forbidden list based on our current PvP duel data. We will keep players updated on how we decide to address it. So my concern there, though, is that it's easy to say Woodland Sprite is the bad guy because that's what you die to. But really, I think the issue is the Bamboo engine. Because we've also seen Woodland Sprite, or we've also seen the Bamboo decks in Exodia, where you can do something similar, and you can also at the same time have like a searcher, like a Dark Fiend Jester, or I forget the other guy's name.
Blue Dragon.
Yeah, Blue Dragon, and the Wonder Wand, which again is just a huge combo engine there. And in the Exodia version, you can kind of it's a less frequent one-turn kill, but you can still very quickly just draw through your whole deck and obviously get the Exodian win there. And once you get Exodia, we don't have very much discard in this game, so there's not much counterplay to that either. We've seen Karate Man versions, and anticipating, because the way that they wrote it, they're saying Woodland Sprite deck. I'm thinking they might be trying to target the Woodland Sprite, which would leave open these other ones. And so I was testing out a version of the Venus Man-Throw combo as well, using the same idea of the Bamboos as the engine. And it worked okay. Significantly worse than the Bamboo, but I think it could be refined into something a little bit better. And basically, the problem in my mind is the Bamboo, specifically the golden one, should probably be just a 2 of. And then it would be significantly less, less consistent and less powerful because you have a lot less draw. You can much less frequently draw your entire deck on turn 1. And I also think the deck, we were talking about it earlier on when the deck was kind of first discovered and first came out, that the frequency with which you win on turn 1 isn't super impressive, but you only get to go first 50% of the time, and then you have to have the right draw, and then the right opening hand, and then a lot of the other stuff kind of along the way has to go along right for you to be able to draw through enough of your deck or the entire deck to get to the 4,000 damage. But regardless, it's enough of a percentage of the games where people have noticed. And when you lose a game without being able to do anything, like you're just sitting there watching them kill you for 5 minutes because it takes a little while to do all the various animations, that's just a really unfun experience. And I don't think that the deck is going to be addressed for win rate purposes. I don't think it's the most oppressive deck. I think it's significantly weaker than, for instance, Cyber Angels was when it first came out. When I played with Cyber Angels, I almost didn't lose a game to King of Games. Just when it came out, just massively oppressive deck in terms of power level. This is not that. This deck has a positive win rate and can climb, but it's not the type of deck that I would try to take to King of Games because it's so draw dependent. But it is the type of deck that, as a game designer, you don't want people rage quitting your game, and it can definitely induce that. So the last point, I guess, is some counterplay. Most of the counterplay will be if you go first, then you can set something to counter it. And so you can set an enemy controller, where what you would do is once they play the sprite and they equip 1 or 2 equipments to it, you can econ take it so that they can't go off and deal a whole bunch of damage to you with it. And then the next turn you have to be able to attack into it to kill the sprite, but then that really messes them up because they've lost the sprite and they've lost a good amount of their damage. And if you're the right type of deck, you can just win from there. Or you can set up another econ, or a floodgate trap hole is a similar thing. Any of the cards that negate a monster's effect or summoning, those are all good ways to do it. but those require you to go first. So again, that's kind of an unfun thing where the coin flip at the start of the game determines how the game goes. I've seen some people playing the life point boost that gives you just an extra 1,000 life points as their skill, because 5,000 is definitely not out of range for the deck, but it is significantly harder, especially since a lot of people who are playing the deck don't have 3 dark pendants, so they're kind of using a slightly suboptimal build, and it has a little bit less damage output. And the last counter, I don't remember. I feel like there's a third.
Oh, is it?
Yes,
okay.
yes, right. The monsters that allow you to negate damage is Eco, and there's a Psychic. Forget what it's called.
Oh, Life Force Harmonizer.
Yeah, there you go. Man, you're awesome. Thank you for that. So those are kind of the 3 counterplay methods that I'm seeing. The problem with the Eco and Life Force method is that those cards are not great against other decks, whereas the Econ and Floodgate Trap Hole and Divine Wrath and whatnot, those are all like pretty good cards. Between Econ and Floodgate Trap Hole, those are just meta cards on their own. So that's kind of the most common route, is to just use the meta cards that are already really powerful and good that also happen to be good against this deck, whereas the other 2 methods are if you really want to hate the deck out, that's how you do it.
Yeah, I think you covered everything. And it's important to note that the nerfs are coming in 2 days from now. I think the limit to Cyber Angel, Dakini, and Machine Angel rituals in 2 days. So, yeah, soon.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I don't think they're going to just pile this in with that, because that's like a 1-day notice for a nerf. That's not really their style. They usually give us, as we saw, like a month and a half or something, a month of notice. So, it'll be interesting to see what they do exactly. Like if the outcry is that bad, and if it's that damaging to the game that they really have to do an emergency nerf without telling anyone, that'd be a really big move. And I'd be surprised to see that, because they didn't do that with Cyber Angels, but maybe they think this is worse.
Yeah. Definitely something to look out for if you do plan on playing it, or if you want to get back into the game because you're dodging this deck.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, if that happens, we'll be covering it next week. We'll be letting you know if you're waiting to hear back before you get it back into the game.
So don't quit the game, right now, because something's going to be done. Something's going to be done. Right. And just a note, I did beat someone when I was playing the deck and going to hell, presumably. I did beat someone who activated Aegis of Gaia. So I burned them like 8,000 or like 7,000.
Right. Yeah. And I beat someone when I was playing the deck and going to hell who had 2 different Econ takes against my Woodland Sprite. But I was able to play around it a bit, and I got a bit lucky on the second one, I think, because he had the Econ take, but then he didn't have the follow-up to kill my Woodland Sprite, so it was alive for the 3rd turn. But for the first one, he killed my Woodland Sprite the next turn. So the deck has a little bit of resilience, too. And especially if you have the Dark Pendants, a lot of extra damage. So it's hard to... using Life Point Boost is probably the weakest counterplay, because it hurts your game because you can't use a real skill, and it's not really an effective counter because they can definitely deal 5,000 damage. The other ones are the better counterplay techniques.
Yep. For the second part of this, I'm going to talk about a real deck. Well, it's not really a real deck, but it's like an emerging deck. It's the Genex deck. The idea of this came from Duel Links Meta Discord. I go to the King of Games section to get an idea of what to play, and various people were posting Genex decks. People typically run the Bandit Keith skill that gives you a 7 completed, but Nyx, who is the burn expert in playing Genex for some reason, not playing Bamboo, he posted a deck with Beatdown, and I was looking at the deck, and it just really makes sense. So I'll share this deck. I'm undefeated with it, but I haven't played much, so take it for what it is. And I've played Genex in the past, but this is Beatdown, so it's a little different. How, typically with Genex, you have your machine monsters. Well, first of all, it's a really cheap deck because all the Genex monsters are rares, and the only rare card you really need is Sergeant Electro, just for your back row control. And the Genex cards you want are Searcher, Turbine, and Army. Searcher is the tutor that can special summon something from your deck. So you would get a Turbine onto the field, and the Turbine adds 400 attack to each Genex monster. The Army is a tribute monster that destroys any card on the field when it's summoned. How this works is you set your Searcher, and the best play is to have Powerful Rebirth. This is an important card, just because it adds a star to the level. So your 4-star monster becomes a 5, and you basically special summon your Turbine, and then you bring back your Searcher. So your Searcher becomes 2100, 5-star, after that happens. And then you could activate Beatdown. And then you could also you could tribute summon a Genex Army next turn. And then there's a lot of other control elements like Pulse Mines, Xing Zheng Hu, Floodgate, things like that were in the original Genex deck. But just the combination of Beatdown and Powerful Rebirth is something that I was completely unaware of, and comboed with Genex Searcher, pretty strong, and reminds me a lot of Red Eye Zombie, in that there are resurrection abilities, and also using Beatdown. And I've been doing pretty well so far with it.
Yeah, sounds like a cool deck. I'm gonna try it out. I don't know. I think part of the reason why this didn't sound familiar to me at all is because I didn't buy very much Electric Overload. I kind of skipped that box, but...
You did it for the ninjas, right?
Right, yeah. I started recently buying it, so I stopped when they announced that they were going to change 3-star demotion, but I might pick it back up again, because that sounds like a fun deck.
Yeah, the version I run only runs 7 of the rares, so 7 of the Genex monsters. You probably have it. Just from that. Wait a minute. I'm completely wrong here. Genex Searcher is from a different box. It is from Galactic Origins.
Alright. Well... yeah, so you need Flame of the Tyrant if you want the Sergeant Electros. You need Electric Overload and the Galactic Origins. Cool.
And, Powerful Rebirth is also from Galactic Origins, I believe. It's with the 6 Samurai box. Oh, it's from Blades of Spirits. Oh, I completely messed this up. So, this is from different boxes.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you definitely need the Powerful Rebirth in this deck. So I'll add that to here. Yeah, but we'll post the deck so you can know. You can look at where the cards are from. I have no idea where they're from.
Well, we tried.
Yeah, we tried. You see Genex and you assume they all came from the same box, but they didn't.
Yeah, I just looked through my collection, and my limiting portion is the Powerful Rebirth. I only have one of those.
Oh, dang. So I guess you'll have to play a Bandit Keith version. Though I don't really like that skill. I don't like Sleight of Hand. I've never really won games with it. I don't know, taking the damage and then you use an equip spell. It's kind of clunky.
Yeah.
But yeah. Definitely a deck to try out. Fairly budget. Yeah, if you don't have all the trap cards, I mean the Pulse Mines are a free card, and you just use your best trap cards and magic cards basically. And Powerful Rebirth, of course, is necessary for the Beatdown combo. That's definitely a card you would run if you had 2. So yeah.
And you run 2 of them in it?
Yeah, 2.
Cool. Luckily, that's a small box, so might be worth it to go looking for it.
Yeah, and it's definitely hard to say where this deck would be after the nerfs, but definitely is better because Cyber Angel Dakini completely wrecks the Searcher. It sends it to the graveyard, which doesn't activate the ability, and it has 400 defense, which gets completely blasted by piercing damage. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. So that's all we have for this week. Thanks for listening, and hope you endure the bamboo for a few more days, hopefully. Maybe a few more days.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. You can find this podcast on the App Store, Google Play Music, Stitcher, and others. Check out the podcast and more at our website, theduelassessment.wordpress.com. We have a YouTube channel as well, so you want to check us out there. You want to help support us, patreon.com/duel_assessment. Send us an email, theduelassessment@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter, duel_assessment. Me at GreenRanger HS, DeckTech at HS DeckTech.
That's right.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Catch y'all next week.